I'm Gareth. I run a consulting business called Sonorous. I consult with early stage startups on music tech and strategy. I spent 10 years at Sony. A good chunk of that was through the first big explosion of direct-to-fan and D2C, as we then called it. So all of this is a topic that remains very close to my heart and I'm very passionate about. We have an amazing set of panelists, and I think we're going to have a good, fun conversation. Anyone's got any questions, I'm up for you just throwing them in the mix whenever you're damn well pleased, but we'll leave some time at the end as well, so feel free to be disruptive. Marisol, over to you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Marisol. I am super excited to be here. It's my first California. I've been in the music tech space for over 15 years, but most recently I've been over at AEG Presents, heading up digital partnerships and figuring out how to merge my background in music tech with the world of live events.
Hi, Aileen Crowley. I'm partner at Lark 42, and my stint in the music business has been about a dozen years in all the new models that are in music and technology. Started a digital singles record label, digital marketing company, was the first streaming promotion company within the music industry. And then we were acquired by Universal Music Group and ran the global streaming team there for 5 years. And then back out into the independent world, working with music and tech companies of all shapes and sizes.
I'm Chris Carey. I'm not meant to be here.
Another Chris.
I regret joking my friend that I would come and join the panel if he was short, and here we are. Chris, I ran Global Insight Universal and EMI a while back, built big data for Sony Music, 110 billion rows of Spotify data, 14 billion rows for EMI a while back. Like numbers more than the average, is the joke at that point. Do lots of stuff with music data and fans. Hopefully I'll slot in. I don't know what the topic is.
Well, we'll keep you like last in the row, right? As we go around, you kind of play catch up. To make this even more confusing, I'm going to reference something the other Chris, like which Chris, right? Like that's the guessing game. So like Chris from Media brought up like I think there was a really interesting slide he brought up. It was kind of early. Those of you with like significantly deeper hangovers might well have missed it. It's well worth having a chat with him about it. But he brought up a slide that was interesting in the context of this conversation. Interesting in the sense of, fan engagement, current model being largely about driving people towards sort of streaming, and that model being somewhat outmoded to like what's actually happening and we're seeing in the industry. So like how in 2023 do you think we should be thinking about fan engagement? And I guess as part of that in the setup, like what are we actually even talking about at this point when we talk about fan engagement? Who wants to go first?
That's a great question. I mean, I think it can mean a lot of things. When I think about fan engagement, I mean, it can cover any facet of what we're doing. I mean, if we're talking about marketing, albums, or, and you're at a label, or if you're a management company, or if you're an artist directly, in the end of the day, I think it's really just about, how do you bring the fans on board to whatever activity you are trying to execute, whether it's getting them to purchase merch, or getting them to engage with their music, or getting them to go to your show. How do you bring the fans into your journey, and how do you get them on board?
And to add to that, I think the piece that is really important to remember is that any music that's not funded by fans isn't really a business for us, right? So understanding that all music is funded by fans, and if you're driving your fans to a technology platform and to a big company versus engaging with your fans and owning that audience, then you're missing a huge part of what the business is if you're not engaging with them and owning that audience and knowing exactly how to get into contact with them.
Yeah, and I think a bit I'd add as well, you've got the comms to fans, we talk to you, you engage, you and me, but there's a whole lot of community you can stimulate as well. So I think getting fans to engage with each other is often overlooked as part of this conversation, is really interesting too.
Yeah, that thing of community is interesting. I guess that came up on your panel about live, right? Like the idea of the conversations that happen with people around a topic they're passionate about that isn't necessarily directly related to... Yeah, I think we'll come back to that because I kind of want to talk about niches and like kind of what that's doing to kind of fandom. But I guess jumping on that point about platforms then, so like as, there's been more and more artists and artists have struggled to make money and revenue, like one of the resounding sort of clarion calls that came up again and again was like, Spotify largely, but like music platforms need to do more to build tools to drive fan engagement. So, like in our collective opinion, is that true? Like, is that where this should be happening? To take your point, right? If your point is, like, to a certain extent that we've ceded so much of this to platforms, like, and there's a wider narrative about, Web 2 platforms and where things aggregate in that type of model, like, should we be expecting those platforms to deepen the tool set for fan engagement, or should we be finding other ways to do it? What should artists, labels, management teams be doing?
So a few things. As someone who's spent probably 10 years of my life saying Spotify and playlisting more than any other words, you could take this for what it's worth, but I do think that using the data that comes from the streaming platforms can be informative for your marketing strategy, but it's not the full picture. If you need to know how to get into contact with your fans, you need an SMS strategy, you need a strategy to email them directly, you have to own that relationship. And if you need to know how much your fans are spending on you. And on average, I can get in touch with 1,000 fans and they're gonna spend $52 on me. That's something that's meaningful and can make a career, and you can live off that as an artist. But when you're saying, go stream my music on Spotify, go stream my music on X platform, then you're giving that relationship over to a corporate entity. And I don't think that's not a way that we can make a career as an artist.
And I mean, to answer your other question about whether that's where these engagement tools should live, I mean the platforms, they have their business is the platform. It's not how to, yes, their message is about empowering artists and helping artists and wanting to build relationships with the artist community, and they have, artist tools and things like that and provide data to do that, but really that's all under, the guise of the fact that they are focused on building their business as a platform and a streaming service, and that's how they make their money, and they know that the artists lead to consumers who want to subscribe because they want that music, they want to listen to it, or whatever thing that they're trying to consume. So I don't think that shouldn't, if we're thinking about where that focus should be, that's not where the focus should be. It should be on great B2B companies, a lot of startups here that I've even seen that are thinking about building great tools and platforms and products so that artists can continue building their own businesses, because that's what this is. Every artist is its brand, their own brand. They're building their own brand. They're building their own identity. They're building their own community, and then they're figuring out how to turn that into a business and how to monetize that if that's ultimately what they're in the business for.
Yeah, and the risk is you send them somewhere for a shallow, siloed experience. You just go, you do that one thing there. Well, actually, I want you to do 15 different things. You've got a finite journey if it is go stream. If you're engaging with the artist, you've got infinite possibility, but we push it away.
So, the silo point's interesting, right? So how much do you think as well the narrative... So, again, this is like the game of Chris's, right? So going to Chris's, like, funnel diagram diamond thing.
I didn't see it, was hungover.
Okay. So other Chris with a C. So Chris, oh wow, they've changed. You've got a live update. That's amazing. Where he was talking about, like how much effort and time, the way I thought about it was like how much time and effort is going into something that the actual intrinsic value of that unit, like the stream, the song, whatever it is less and less, and how little time is happening elsewhere. The narrative around fan engagement tends to be about streaming. So I'm interested about the siloed point, right? Because that's just like a tiny part of like what sits around an artist. So like, I guess picking on you a little bit, Marisol, from a live point of view, like, so from an AAG point of view, like that fan experience for an artist going to see someone at a festival gets even more strange, right? Like rather than like going to see a artist at a particular gig, but like that fan experience for the fan is kind of not really about the stream, right? So how do we, like, how joined up is it at the moment? Are we still like super siloed when we think about fandom? How does that affect how we need to be thinking about things from an ecosystem point of view, about startups, about technology?
I mean, the live experience to me is part of whatever the artist's brand and plan is. And obviously, like, you know, a live company or promoter and, you know, an artist may choose to work with one promoter, or they may choose to work with any number of promoters because they're focused on how do I bring my live music to my fans. And getting on a festival bill, I think, has, in some cases, a different meaning than going on a tour, where you know that you're now out there serving the audience that wants to come see you live. And a lot of times before, it was like the tour was sort of the afterthought for an album, but now it almost seems like the tour is taking over, and then the music is sort of almost piggybacking on the live experience now. But for festivals, it's very much about discovery. It's about getting on the right bill, getting in the right time slot, getting on the right stage, so that you can get in front of an audience, so that you can then turn around and build that. So that is actually probably, it's a huge opportunity for discovery, in the same way that, you know, potentially your music is going to be an opportunity for discovery and streaming, and they probably go hand in hand there, versus a tour, which is really about engaging your fans in a new and different way. And obviously, you know, for smaller bands, you don't make a lot of money on that tour, and you have to think about monetizing in other ways, but you're bringing them in and kind of getting hold of them in a deeper way, so that you can do that.
Yeah, and to the point of like the community and like the vibe that exists at a show, and being able to somehow replicate that in the digital world, I think is really important. And I think so often when it's just like, oh, I want to engage with a community and an artist, and it's like, go to my link tree and click through, you're missing an opportunity to create a really a good experience, and to create that connection. And that's the piece where it's just like trying to ask artists, hey, how can I support you? How do I buy some merch from you? Like, where can I buy your record? And they're just like, here's a link to my playlist on Spotify. And so I think like being able to really engage with the community and give people a way to spend money on you and have that positive experience is important.
And that, I have to say, it's not new, but it is new-ish that you see fans now be like, how do I support you? What can I buy? Where can I go to purchase things? Like, that was never something that, years ago, you didn't even have interactions with artists, and that was not something that you would say to them. And that, like, I think the perception now, and I think amongst consumers, is definitely like, artists aren't making as much money. They're not selling records anymore. Like, I have a passion for this artist, and I want to figure out how to support them, and I know that their bottom line is what's going to keep them going, and that's a very different perspective that I think a fan has now than they've ever had before.
No, massively, and I think the willingness to support you actually, I'm sorry, I don't want to keep saying community, but actually you're over-invested in that artist. You want to make sure that the thing you enjoy can continue. And there's a willingness there to part with cash, not necessarily for anything more than supporting. Something comes back, it's a hoodie, it's a gig ticket, it's a something, but I think people are realising the importance of spending particularly well. And do you argue, therefore, it's driven by streaming? Does the low value of streaming, the low cost of it, enable live music spend? If you look at live music in the UK, it overtook recorded music, 2009? And you could draw almost a straight line between the diminishing cost of engaging with recorded music and the growth of live music. And I think maybe we're seeing that go one step further, particularly post-pandemic, when there wasn't the opportunity to go and do the live music bit, to say, well, actually, I'm not spending much on your music. What can we do?
Right. Well, and the data that was presented from Luminate yesterday, right, which was that out of the entertainment categories, that 40% identify as superfans in the music space more than any other space, and yet you're spending £10, less than £10 in that bucket, whereas there's a way to nudge that up a little bit, right?
100%.
Yeah.
Or 200%.
Yeah.
That's not a lot.
We'll do a study.
So is that, but then would that just, so to both those points then, is that £10 more on music? And does that £10 then come off eventually off the price of the tickets? Because is your point that essentially the opportunity is here, Live's been clever enough to see the opportunity, we're having a different conversation about fan engagement now, but and essentially ticket prices have gone up because people are willing to pay those things. So bringing back to thinking about that point about like what's the value of a super fan engagement, and knowing that, like, are we looking at the right things? Because are we not like going, should it not be recorded music plus how much they're spending on tickets, plus how much they spend on merch? I mean, from an artist point of view, like if I'm winning on all those things, I don't care whether recorded music gets an extra $5, do I?
Well, I'll also not answer that question, but go to the point of that 30% of Gen Z fans want more merch options, right? So going to like, right, it's all part of having multiple revenue streams as an artist, because that's the business. And how, like, we're all sitting here working in this world of music and tech, like we think about different ways to monetize things and have revenue streams and diversify, so we're not just reliant on one stream. And so I think it's that full pie, and it's that pie that media that Chris showed us earlier, right? Which is that nice circle with probably a dozen things around it.
And I actually want to say something, because we're talking a lot about tangible goods and kind of the things that we already do and we know about, and I mean, I think part of this too is like what's the artist, who's the audience, and who are they, and what area do they fit in? Because, you know, there's different niches, different genres, different types of fans. I mean, they might be building a Discord and starting their own subscriptions, or doing some big community thing. It might have nothing to do with, I need to have another T-shirt on my website. And again, I think I go back to this notion of like, what kind of brand are you trying to build, and who is the audience that you are trying to capture? Because this is about community, but it's also about culture, because that's what music is. And I guess we keep talking about all this data we've been seeing, which is clearly, I mean, had an impact on me, and I think all of us, that like the other piece with, and we talked about this earlier, was the fact that like 50% of people that buy vinyl don't even have a record player, but they are buying that vinyl maybe because they think that's a way to give back to the artist, maybe because it's a cool piece of art, maybe it's some tangible thing that they feel that they have a connection to as part of the community. They can say that they have this, they can show it off. I mean, it's a status symbol, whatever it is.
Yeah, I mean, we've circled, like, so let's do the community thing, right? So I kind of want to steer us towards thinking about, I guess, some changing behaviors. Like how does that start to shape thinking around fan engagement? I guess we're seeing rise of, you know, both like self-mobilizing fandoms, right? Which I don't think is a new thing, right? Like that's existed for a long time. Like my favorite obtuse example is always talking to people about Fugazi and how mad Fugazi fans were when they start going on about like, you know, K-pop and all this other stuff. Like we've been here before, right? But what is interesting is like technology's enabling that. So on one end, you've got like these big fandoms like being able to self-organize and do stuff, right? And that kind of is a weird angle for fan engagement. And then on the other end, you've got ever splintering like niche fandoms that are able to like kind of disappear off into their own little places. So like, how do you reach them, right? Like own Discords, smaller Discord things, like et cetera, et cetera. So like, how does that changing kind of behavior start shaping up like how we think about fan engagement and what's coming?
Well, there's a few things on that point, Gareth. Like where understanding like like we talk about personas and user personas a lot within tech, right? And creating a product that people want. I think so often we skip over the fan profile and how to market towards the fan, and understanding you don't need to speak about the niche. You don't need all the fans, right? You can have a really successful career by really just focusing on your fan base, who's going to connect with your music, and really gearing everything towards a tiny piece of the pie, which will actually, it really will get you more than saying going wide and going wide.
I mean, ages ago, there used to be this sort of fan pyramid, which, you know, everyone's kind of spun off and done different things, but there was at one point a fan pyramid that had the super fan at the top, and that was like probably pre-digital, really. I mean, this is not a new conversation, and I think, though, when you thought about it at that time, it was about recorded music because that's how that's where all the revenue was, and then you had your live thing and you sold some shirts and whatever. But now it's definitely much more about brand building and owning all of that, and looking at the breadth of tools that are available that fit in with what your goals are, who you are as an artist, and then what kind of fan you're trying to reach.
And there's a slight irony when we talk about silos, then we talk about Linktree. You've siloed everything off, and then you've just served up a menu of which silo you then want to go to. That you've had to, because of the silos, you've had to then go, oh, look, here's the list. Partly because different fans are coming in for different reasons, and you cannot know ahead of time which reason it is someone's coming in for. But, treading on slightly dangerous ground, I think I could make an argument for never saying, go and stream my music on listing streaming services ever again on Linktree. Because surely if I've got as far as clicking a link and I know your name, if I care enough, I'm going to go and find it. Maybe it's too simplistic. It's definitely too simplistic. I had beer again yesterday. But there's an essence, if we always cater for the lowest action, we don't drive the better action. So if you got me as far as your Linktree link and you're then going to send me off to another streaming service to go and generate 0.00 something, great, but can't we be bolder? Can't we push you somewhere higher in that value chain and trust you to go and find your streaming service alone? Thanks, Jake.
He likes it. You've got a fan. Your super fan is up there. All right, so wearing my marketing hat for a minute. Like, so if part of that conversation then is like understanding kind of like who your core audience is, understanding what they want, build things for them, that helps you kind of get better engagement, better revenue, et cetera, et cetera. Chris, to your point, I guess I'm going to flip that and go, then is that a lack, like if your point is largely by the time people are getting there and you're giving them this menu, they've probably already done the thing that you're wasting lots of useful real estate sending them off to go and do, is that then we just don't have a good enough understanding of like the fan journey? So like from a like kind of like user buyer, like going really crass, because for some reason we like they've got to be fans, not consumers, right? Like, is it that journey that's like the thing that's missing? Like a lack of understanding of like actually how do people use the tools? How do people come in? Like where do they go?
Maybe, but I think for me it's more about the value of the interaction. And I think you've got to just trust that for that bit of friction that's going to be created by not making it super easy, it's worth it. And the person who gets past that bit of friction is more valuable to you.
Yeah, well, I think it's like making it fun. Like that's the thing. It's like it's music, it's entertainment. It's like it should be a fun experience, and I think so often it's just like, oh, click this and stream this, and it's really mundane and really boring, and like we came to be entertained, not educated, you know. So
Absolutely, and that excitement, like if you just go on a streaming service that doesn't offer you much interaction with the artist,
Right.
much deeper engagement, you've had that exciting moment, and suddenly nothing happens.
right, you're sitting looking at a platform, and the experience is mediated by a platform. Period.
Absolutely.
So, on like, coming back to something else, like for every time we mention Chris, we should have had a jar to put €1 in to buy drinks later for the Chris's that we keep mentioning. But coming back to something else that Chris was talking about, which was that idea of, well, he was kind of talking about like the fan creator like kind of flywheel thing, right? But like this idea that like the distance between fans and artists is a lot closer, right? Like so. Pledge was so again, like referencing like what Ted was talking about, Pledge was interesting because Pledge took the thing that Kickstarter kind of like failed to be able to do because it was like artists didn't like the idea of GoFundMe versions of like I'm not a charity case, and actually going out and talking to artists during lockdown, most of them were pretty adamant they didn't want to go out messages of like come like pay my bills, right? But to your point about fans feeling like that is, you know, by buying merch, by buying vinyl, etc., and participating, is that like working out because this nature of like the division between the artists we love and their fans is just expected to be closer? Like, so an artist I'm really thinking about when talking about that is like Ice Spice, who like like has like these super conversational chats like with all her fans, which is like wildly different when I think about like marketing of artists of old and, you know, et cetera, et cetera. Like, so how much is like that collapsing gap between like artist and fan sort of changing things? And is that something that we're perceiving in little pockets, or is that something that we think broadly is happening across the board?
Well, I'll just talk about like one artist I'm currently working with, where it's, again, small fan base, 1,000 fans, but he had all those 1,000 fans that he met at shows across the period of a couple years. He converted them into WhatsApp groups, and then in the last few months, taking that and converting it to a Substack subscriber, and building the network there, so he now can contact them directly, and that they get a month free, and then they're converting to a paid subscriber. So again, there's different models to do this, but there's and different platforms to help artists do that. But essentially, it will come down to being able to connect directly with your fans and giving them an opportunity to do that, and having the conversation with the fans on Substack and on WhatsApp. And it can take a lot of different forms, but I think being able to provide that to a fan, having a one-on-one conversation is important, and there is a lot of value to it.
We're in this world now, obviously, where we can have direct contact with like any number of people that would have been out of touch before. Like I might, you know, formally go on Twitter, now Threads, whatever, and like, you know, say something, and like the artist or talent might actually reply to me. And when that does happen on occasion, it's like, ooh, you get like a little twinge of excitement, and like that is something that I think fans expect now. But on the flip side, I mean, there are artists who aren't going to do that. And it's like, and I mean, I can think of, I mean, there's like a country artist named Eric Church. It's a really good example. It's not my, you know, genre, but I admire the brand that he's built. He's a diehard fan base. He is very low key, doesn't show a lot of his personal life, and really focuses all on the fans and their own community. And they do their own meetups, and it's a huge community of fans that's bonded with each other over the artist, rather than the artist feeling like he has to be in the middle of it communicating with all of them, which is like the polar opposite, but is having the same effect in a different way.
Very cool. I'm watching time, and I'm going to try and get us finished pretty. 3 minutes? Any questions? Otherwise, I've got a bonus question for the panelists.
Well, listening to you, I mean, and you were pointing that a bit, isn't it that we are so used to giving everything away for free? I mean, we talk to we have a big fan base, they're huge fans, and we start talking to them for free. I mean, there can be a subscription if it's only for €1 or something. I mean, they pay that. So I think there should be maybe a flip in this fan engagement thing. So we think that we do everything for free, so we can sell a stream, or we can sell an album, or we can sell some merchandise. But there's so much value in the contact. And of course, there will be layers in how much you want to get involved with your audience. But then I think that's worth money, and we're giving that away for free.
My first job in music tech was working at a digital distribution company called IOTA, and we you know, at the time, it was pretty groundbreaking. I mean, there was still downloads, and we developed a whole platform so that bloggers and podcasters could get access to what we called promo tracks, and we got all of our rights holders to grant sort of a focus track from their album that we could then allow all of these folks to distribute in exchange for putting buy links up. And it was that notion of like trying to convince all these rights holders that no, you do have to give a taste of something now for free. And it was like sort of the start of, you know, the more and more and more of exactly what you're talking about, which is like this one most valuable asset, which was at the time your recorded music. That was your asset. You are now starting to feel like you needed to give away to people to lure them into your like ecosystem. And that's what radio was always doing. But as radio has started to, I mean, I still listen to a lot of radio, but generally radio's sort of gone and faded, and now we have streaming where you have access to everything, and it's an interesting way to think about the conversation, and how to step in and start. But it's a challenging one because that is now, I feel like what anyone who listens to music kind of expects, that it's just all there for you all the time, and everything else around it is what you're monetizing.
But the bit I'd say as well is that it's not that no one's making money from those shares, those likes, those engagements. It's just not coming back to the artist.
He's like, you're done.
Cut off, Josh. It's done.
Cut off.
It's over.
Talk too much. I'm trying to look like Ted. I don't. Sorry. Yeah, but I forgot what I wanted to tell you.
We'll talk after.
Making money,
Yeah,
not being
making-
shy.
Yeah. Well, I think that like I said, flipping the starting point, and that's what I want to tell. Want to share with you is maybe you could also wonder on what the thing is that the artist is selling. Is it his song or is it time? I mean, responding to your audience is time. And what are you selling?
And they're probably not selling time. They're probably selling the emotional reaction. The part of the engagement is that feeling of, oh, someone came back to me.
Just to go to the point about Marisol made about like people buying vinyl, I think it's actually part of the problem when we think about fan engagement and a lot of these things. We spend all our time thinking about what people sell rather than what people want to buy, right? And I think the music industry, if I was to give Ted a thing of where it's fucked, is like we need to spend more time thinking about what fans and the people that we expect to buy and participate want from the services we build, the music we create, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I think artists generally are pretty good at that. I think the rest of us could probably do more work to do better. And I think that becomes the bit that I think is the thing that I think we need to focus on a little more. I think we're probably out of time, right? We're done. You've all been wonderful. You've been wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Enjoy California.